I bet every one of you had a situation where player characters commit some kind of atrocity, the town guard arrives to arrest them, and then what? Do they go to prison? Do they become slave oarsmen on a galley? Do they just get a fine? Will there be a trial? Or does the game simply end? Personally, I have never really thought about the legal systems in my games too much, but perhaps I should. I just opened the Dungeon Master's Guide for D&D 3.5, and there's basically one paragraph about this that says something along the lines of think about the laws, but make sure not to detract from the player's fun. Let's check GURPS, maybe it has something better. And of course it does. Pages from 506 to 508 describe control ratings, legality classes, and rules for arrest, trial and punishment. Let's take a look at them in more detail. First of all, the GM should define the control rating for a nation or settlement in question. It ranges from CR0, a total anarchy, to CR6, total oppression. This defines how many laws there are and how strict they are. Regardless of control rating, the use of force or the threat of use of force usually is illegal. Generally speaking, there can be three kinds of violations. If you violate a law, then you may stand trial and receive punishment. If you violate somebody's right, you may stand civil trial or get an informal beating. If you violate a custom, then you simply get a reaction penalty. I believe that this is covered by the culture of familiarity rules. So let's go through it step by step. You commit a crime, and law enforcement agents arrive. In some societies, they are empowered to do everything. They are the police, judge, jury, and executioners at once. However, in other societies, they have to follow a legal procedure to arrest you. If that's the case, the GM makes a law-police roll in secret. Critical failure means that the policeman messed up the procedure so hard that you are released without any questions. Failure means that he made a procedural mistake that may be exploited. To do that, make a roll against law criminal or law police, and if you succeed, you are released. You cannot use a default here. Alright, you got arrested. You get shackled and thrown into jail, which may or may not be the same as prison. You stay there until your trial. Or, if you want to, you can bail yourself out by paying a certain sum of money. If you jump bail, that is, bail yourself out and flee before your trial, you'll face additional charges. Finally, the time comes for your trial. Depending on the society, it can be just for show and have a predetermined outcome. It can be noisy and informal or formal and fair. The type of trial depends on the society. Trial by ordeal is a kind of trial where mostly luck determines the outcome. It can range from finding a way out of a maze, to being thrown tied up into water, to many other options, especially in fantasy games. Trial by combat is a subtype of trial by ordeal, and usually combines the trial and punishment. Trials by combat can be very varied. In some societies, the fighters must be evenly matched. In some, the offender and the defender must fight regardless of their combat skills. And in some other societies, they can be very unfair, like throwing somebody unarmed into a pit with monsters. Trial by judge is, well, done by a judge. The outcome is determined by a reaction roll, or if the defender is actually allowed to defend himself or have a lawyer, an influence roll using the appropriate law specialty can replace it. In either case, the roll is modified by things such as evidence, status, and other things as appropriate. Adversarial trial is conducted as a quick contest of law between the prosecutor and defender in the presence of a judge and possibly jury. The result of the quick contest serves as a modifier for a reaction roll made by the judge or jury. Alright, so you stood trial and were found guilty. What's next? Next up is your punishment. And punishment also can be very varied. GURPS basic set lists the following: fine, public humiliation, imprisonment, beating, branding, maiming, deprivation of rights, exile, slavery, quest, magical or psionic brainwashing, arena combat, torture or execution. The latter is said to be the least useful option as, well, the character dies and the game ends for the player, unless he wants and can make a new character. As you can see, even if you commit a crime and are found guilty, it's not the end of the world. It can lead to some interesting situations and may make rarely used skills useful. After all that, a sentence is merely a setback that is likely to impose new disadvantages on you, that range from negative reputation or social stigma to something like one hand or one eye. That's all for GURPS basic set, but let's go back to D&D. At the start of the video I mentioned that the Dungeon Master's Guide doesn't really have anything on that topic. But there are other books that do, Dungeon Master's Guide 2 and Cityscape. The former goes into more details, while the latter is merely an abridged version of the former. DMG 2 says that in a medieval society, there usually isn't a separate law enforcement force. Concepts such as neighborhood guard patrols is something that has no historical basis. Usually, when a criminal has to be apprehended, the town mayor calls the armed tax collectors or the militia to do the job. Alternatively, armed knights or adventurers could do it too. On the other hand, if you're playing in a fantasy game, why not introduce a fantasy police force? I think that'd be cool in some settings. Cityscape says more or less the same thing, but in fewer words. However, it also talks about weapon and spell laws. This is something GURPS Fantasy talks about too. I feel that the legality of spells is something the GM has to think about to create a believable society. Weapon use laws in Cityscape mention peace bond, a concept of tying a weapon to its sheath. However, Gary Gygax's Living Fantasy says that whatever game designer started the trend of limiting weapon use with peace bonding was full of shit. Weapons were considered to be part of the person, and carrying weapons was considered to be absolutely okay and even proper. An armed society is a polite society. Armed people were the rule, not an exception. Armor, however, is a different matter. Anything heavier than leather armor was restricted to the nobility, guards and soldiers. GURPS, however, has mechanics for armor imposing a reaction penalty. GURPS got everything covered. The same book also talks about different exotic punishments: temporal stasis, transmogrification into a harmless animal or an object, magical disfigurement, curses, dimensional banishment, soul entrapment, memory wipe, etc. It's pretty cool. The existence of magic also makes laws more complicated. For example, spells like Compel Truth could make trials easier, but various polymorphing, illusion and mind control spells could complicate a case a lot. There could also be many new types of crime. Mind control or even mind reading might be illegal. Summoning and necromantic magic could cause many new crimes to spring into existence, but that's only some surface level stuff. What about using body control or illusion magic to impersonate a noble? What about using healing magic to regrow a hand of a thief who got the hand severed as a punishment for theft? Resurrection could be also illegal or very limited, as it can lead to many complications. Scrying and other information spells also can be used in very questionable ways. On one hand, taking it all into account can be very difficult, but on the other hand, it might be a fun thought exercise. And that's it. I hope you found this video useful. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.